All right, we are officially live. Hello, everybody. Joshua Hatton here with ImpEx Beverages. And for those of you who have watched these events before, you probably remember in previous events, I've been surrounded by whiskey bottles, and that kind of made sense because we were focused on whiskey. But this time around, we're going to change focus a little bit. We're going to take a detour, if you will, from whiskey, because I don't know about you. It's really hot where I am. I imagine it's at least warmer where you are, and that really, in my mind, is cocktail season. So we have some really special guests with us who are going to teach us a bit about cocktails and a bit about their own spirits as well. Before I bring them on, I wanted to bring in my partners in crime. First, I'll bring in the wonderful Mr. Sam Filmus. How are you, sir?
Hello, how are you, Joshua?
I'm doing well. You gonna make any cocktails with some of those Kilhoman bottles you have behind you?
Yeah, that would be more like a blend of blends, but I'm looking forward to see what the experts say about real cocktails.
Indeed. And then Mr. Udy. How are you, Chris?
Good. How you guys doing? I'm sorry if I'm yelling. I got new earplugs.
I think you're saying you already started in with the cocktail, so your volume is already hitting high.
Oh no, not yet. But I got my knife, I got my lemon, and I got a bunch of booze, so I think I'm sorted. So I can't wait to try this out.
Yeah, beauty. And then I'm gonna invite. Let me see. Normally I say ladies first, so why not ladies first? Miss
Hello.
Summer Jane Bell. How are you, Summer?
I'm terrific. Thanks for inviting me today, Joshua. It's going to be fun to make some drinks with and chat about cocktails.
Beauty. I'm excited, and I really appreciate you joining us. And really quickly, do you prefer Summer Jane?
Either way, I have
Either.
friends that call me both. Probably my closest friends might call me Summer Jane, but Summer is a lot easier to type, so I usually go by Summer for business.
Joshua,
I'm easygoing either way.
she prefers cocktail queen, but that's kind of internal.
Oh, that's right. I was asking you about your title before. You were a sales rep of Southern California. You were 10 years as sort of leadership in USBG, but cocktail queen. I didn't hear that part of it.
I will take her in Southern California any day. She's San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm actually the sales rep for the Bay Area, so north.
You're not getting her, Mr. Yudi, only in your dreams.
Her and Helen are coming down next week.
You wish. I'm here at Hello Stranger Bar in Oakland. It's a wonderful backdrop for me, and I get to use this lab. It's my husband's bar. I'm a partner here too, and with our friend Josh, and we make some delicious drinks. It's also a dance floor. So come to Hello Stranger Bar another time if anybody's coming in the area.
Oh my gosh, that sounds fantastic. I mean, because the dance bar, you have a few cocktails. That's the only time I have the courage, liquid courage, to dance on the dance floor.
Perfect.
And then last, but surely not least, Mr. Martin Geijer of Geijer Spirits or California Spirits. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me tonight. It's always awesome to be on.
Yeah, really, really lucky to have you. Appreciate your spirit making and also your expertise in cocktail making. So, and then there's one last little guest that I'm gonna bring on. And she's sitting over here. And she's gonna be my partner in crime as she puts down her knitting needles. That's my wife, Haida.
Hello.
Hi, Haida.
Hi.
Normally, she's not interested in the whiskey events, but she heard cocktails. She said, "Oh, tonight's your cocktail thing. Can I join you?" I said, "Why not? Let's make it happen."
And she's the ImpEx spokesperson for case chasers.
Yeah, for cast chasers. That's right. We do our commercials.
That's right.
She's famous. So I guess what I'd like to do now, before we get into some of the cocktail making and the ins and outs, I'd love to hear from the both of you a little bit about your own spirits. Martin, if you wouldn't mind talking a bit about California spirits, what you do, how long you've been doing it, and how you produce some of the spirits we're going to be using today. I'd love to hear that.
All right. Yeah. So stop me if I run long, because sometimes if I get going, I can keep going.
5 minutes.
So I'll try to keep it short. My name is Juan Geijer, owner of Geijer Spirits, also known as Geijer Glug, and we'll get into that. So I am lucky enough to be born in a family who has a matriarch who was a moonshiner. And because of that, we have a family recipe of a glug. And that glug is spirit-based and not wine-based, as glug normally are. So when I moved to the US, that recipe had passed down to me as the 4th generation of caretaker. And I started cooking it in California the way that we've had for 4 generations, and shared it with a lot of people. And it turns out Americans like glug. It has a lot of cinnamon, cardamom, and cloves, those kind of warming winter spices in there. And that kind of hit the palate. So that actually made me intrigued to launch it as a commercial product, and then share with the wider range of people than the people that I knew. And I named my company Geijer Glug Inc. because I thought I was going to sell it as a glug to the Swedish expat community. That, of course, like me, missed glug. But once we released the product, bartenders kind of get their hands on it and started playing around with cocktails and actually use it as a modifier in cocktails. So that was kind of interesting. I'd never even experienced that before. So that really made me fall in love with the craft cocktail bar scene. And I'm not coming from the craft cocktail bar scene. I'm coming from, a completely different background. It's kind of boring, so I won't even touch on it. But this kind of blew me out of the water with flavors that people are creating and what they can do, and the creativity of bartenders, like just using glug. And it has yet to meet a base spirit that it doesn't play nice with. But that also taught me very quickly about different flavor profiles and get really interested in these different flavors. So that motivated me then to finally start building some other products than just the glug. So Glug Inc., even though it's a registered company as that, has now moved on to become known as Geijer Spirits because I have more of a portfolio of spirits.
Got it.
No, they still live in the esoteric. So, I can just show it quickly here. We got the glug. And then after that, I released an aquavit, which we will talk about more this evening. It's kind of this blur thing. It's not good for the labels, huh? Okay, there we go.
There you go.
And then an orange liqueur that has a little bit of attitude, and a spice liqueur. And then we come into the fun stuff. The Fernet, a Falernum, and a Amaro.
There we go.
So that's my lineup. That's the spirits that I use. So as you can see from this lineup, they're mostly esoteric, kind of weird spirits. I kind of like to live in that weird space because that's where I thrive. That's what I'm interested in. And I like to be challenged on my palate. So I built these to kind of fit my palate, what I want in this kind of space. And I don't know how we're doing on time, because that's a really, really quick run through of, getting through the spirits and kind of setting the stage for where I came from.
Yeah, beauty. No, I appreciate that. I think that's a good elevator pitch on your spirits. It did explain it. Thank you. And Summer, though you're not with Herb Garden Gin, I know you work with it quite a lot, and I know you love it. I remember being with you in a training we did early on with them, and them talking about sort of the hydrosols that they use to dilute the gin, and I remember you being excited about that, and I was still super excited.
It's a fantastic product. So Herb Garden Gin is from Scotland. The master distiller is also the farmer, and all the botanicals are grown on site, which I really respect, even the juniper, and it's all biodynamic. So he's really passionate about the agricultural aspect. He picks all the flowers and herbs and botanicals for the gins at their absolute peak because he's in the garden all the time. And then he dehydrates them. He's got a big kind of shed that's a dehydrator with screen shelves, and then keeps those on hand to make all these fun, different dynamic mixes. The 3 that we have imported to the US are the lemon verbena juniper, which we're going to use in the first cocktail, the pink elderflower jasmine and juniper, which is going to be in the second cocktail I'm making today, and also a damask rose juniper, very, very rose forward, but also very balanced with the juniper. This is also a fun one Rose can sometimes be a little polarizing, and I've turned this one on to people that aren't even Rose fans. So it's really well crafted. It was so fun to do some virtual trainings with Hamish, the master distiller, because he's such a character. He has a pet owl named Rue big owl on his arm that lives in his house with him. He says it's his very best friend. So I think he's just totally at one with nature, and the spirits that he makes are incredibly bold and flavorful, incredibly aromatic, and mostly because what you said, Joshua, instead of just proofing down the spirit with water, like you would cut high proof distillate with water to get it down to desired proof, he actually makes a water distillate out of each botanical. So in this case, the lemon verbena, he makes a water distillate, kind of like folks might know what seed lip is, like these new kind of non-alcoholic spirits are often water-based distillates. So it has the incredible flavor and aroma of lemon verbena in the water itself. So what a innovative way to, in the process, just to like add and kind of really bulk up the aroma, the aromatics. So I think they're incredibly well crafted, and I love making cocktails with them. They've been a big splash here in San Francisco.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add to you is something that Hamish had said in a training I was part of last week or the week before. They said that little bit where they take the distilled water to bring the gin down, in part makes it so that the lemon verbena cannot be a London dry gin style, but he doesn't care.
Yeah,
because he's doing it to taste, right? He's doing it to what he wants to do, and I really like that approach. So,
me too.
Thank you both so much. Now, Summer, you're going to be making our first cocktail, and actually, before we get to that, Brian DeVore had asked a question: will all the recipes be available? Brian, they most definitely will, as both Summer and Martin go over the cocktails. Not just the ingredients, but also the instructions on how to make them. I'm going to be popping them up on the screen. And then for anybody who's watching this today, who, my guess is you're not going to have all the ingredients at the ready, you can come back and watch this. This will always be on our Facebook page. It'll be on our YouTube channel as well. So you can always return to it if any of these cocktails sounded interesting to you, and hopefully they do. So Summer, you and I talked a little bit before about a little bit of cocktail history.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can go over some of that.
So we're going to start off with some of the really basic cocktail families today. We're going to go over 3 different of the basic codex of cocktails that so many other cocktails have stemmed from through history. The first group we're going to be talking about is martinis. We're going to be talking about different ratios, the history of such. Then we're going to go over the gimlet, history of it, and what other cocktails are very similar ratio to a gimlet. So you can make, all kinds of variations. And then we're going to talk about the daisy. And these are 3 of about 6 or 7, depending on who you talk to, of the main cocktails in the family tree of cocktails, where everything else stems from. So do you want me just to go ahead and start with a little martini history? Are we ready to make some drinks?
This is empty, and there's something very wrong with that. So.
All right. So the martini was first published in the 1880s in a bartender's manual. Like every cocktail, there's many different theories of its origin, and it's hotly debated. Here locally where I live in Northern California, a lot of people like to think it came from the town Martinez, which is about 30-minute drive from where I am right now. I like that theory. The story goes, in the gold rush, a gold miner struck it rich. He went to his local bar. He said, "I want some champagne. Want to celebrate?" The bartender didn't have champagne, so he basically made what we call like a dealer's choice cocktail. He just came up with something on the fly, and it was gin, vermouth, bitters, maraschino, and a little lemon served up. And that's basically the Martinez. He called it the Martinez special. That same gold miner went to San Francisco and asked for it, and then word kind of got around as a really great combination. That's the first theory. Another theory, it was invented in San Francisco from a gold miner asking a bartender before he went to Martinez. I don't like that story as much. Some people think it originated at the Knickerbocker Hotel in New York. Some people think it was named after a very famous vermouth company called Martini and Rossi, which was also created in the mid 1800s. So timeline lines up on that one as well. But basically, a martini is vodka or gin, usually gin. And we're going to be making gin ones and an aquavite one today, and vermouth. And the original martini was really equal parts. And that's the one that we're going to be making today, which is also, I'm going to make. It's also becoming a lot more popular again with this kind of resurgence or a new idea of like low proof cocktails, being able to imbibe several in a night. I like to go out and order 50-50 martinis. In the 50s and 60s, the 3 martini lunch, those were likely 50-50 martinis, not the dry martinis of the 70s and 80s. I think what happened is in the dark ages of the cocktail era, like 70s and 80s, people like to call the dark ages of cocktails, post-Prohibition, post-Mad Men era, when cocktails started to get really sweet and nobody really knew what they were doing anymore. Nobody put the vermouth in the fridge, and it's a fortified wine. So it started to just go bad and sitting in the well in all of these bars, and discos and nightclubs and stuff. So people started to not like vermouth. So they put less and less in the drink. So that's where this dry martini came from. I remember when I first started bartending almost 20 years ago, they would just like hold the vermouth bottle next to the glass and they would look at each other, and that would be like a dry martini. That's how I was trained. And it took a long time for me to actually learn, proper specs. And there's a lot of different proper specs. It just depends on your palate, how much you like vermouth, how drunk you want to get on one drink. But I'm going to go ahead and jump in and make a martini. So that was a little history. Now we'll do a little practical.
Perfect. And so this is the 50-50 we're going to be making, correct?
50-50 martini, which is my current fave. This is what I order when I go out a lot, especially with oysters. It's just delightful. So I'm going to be using the Herb Garden Lemon Verbena Gin. First step when you're making any drink that's up, served in a cocktail glass with no ice, is called served up. You want to chill down your glass. So I put some ice into this glass. This is the glass I'm going to use here at the cocktail bar because we're a dance club. We don't have stems on our martini glasses. A coupe, a martini glass would be preferable, something stemmed. This is what I'm going to use. So I chilled it down with ice, getting it nice and cold. You can just set that aside, put your ice in, set that glass aside while you make the drink. And then it's super simple. It's just equal parts. So I've got 1.5 ounces of vermouth into my mixing vessel. If you don't have like a classic, this is called a Yarai. There's lots of other brands. You can use a coffee mug. Perfect. You could use a pint glass. You could even use, if you do have a shaker tin, you could use your shaker tin. You just kind of have to hold it a little more steady because it's not as heavy weighted as a classic mixing vessel is. And then I'm going to put 1.5 ounces of my gin in here. Fill with ice. Sorry, I had to go off camera for that. So you want to make sure there's a lot of ice in the vessel. You don't want to just put a little bit of ice. You want to fill the vessel up with ice, and then you're stirring. So why do you shake and not stir? Although James Bond would beg to differ. So stirred cocktails are really for all spirits, or if it's all booze, you're just chilling and diluting. You shake a cocktail like a daiquiri or a gimlet or a daisy or a margarita because you want to add air, and the process of shaking actually adds air. Martinis, I prefer stirred, but when I'm bartending, I would ask the guests, especially when I was starting out in dive bars, I would ask the guests, do you want me to shake it or stir it? Because some people prefer it shaken. Maybe that's how they came of age, but we're going to do it more of a classic way, which is stirred. So you just want to stir that till the outside of your vessel starts to feel cold to the touch. And that's relative, right? It's really relative. You can always kind of test it halfway through to see if it's at your desired dilution. One way I do that is I just get the spoon and I put a little bit on my hand. I can see how cold it is. It's getting pretty close. I'm going to stir it just a little bit more. And I can do a stirring demo another time, but you're just kind of going around and around.
Is there, as you're doing that, is there are there tolerances, like you say ounce and a half and an ounce and a half, you know, is it so tight that if one's off just by a little bit, it could throw it off? Or you think that there's enough tolerance that you're going to find a pocket?
Certainly not in this instance. Some recipes, especially multi-ingredient recipes, if it's like a small amount that you need, you probably only need a small amount. Say it calls for a quarter ounce of something very bitter. If you do put too much in, you'd definitely be able to tell. But in a 2-ingredient cocktail like this, especially the martini, where the ratios are variable depending on your taste, it's really no problem. If it's a little over, a little under, you're gonna be good.
Cool. Thank you.
If you do one a little over, just do the other spirit also a little over, and then you're back to equal parts. So I'm going to use my handy Hawthorne strainer on the top of my vessel. You could probably fit this on top of your coffee mug, Chris. Do you have one of these? That works. Perfect.
I don't have the strainer. This dude out, whatever.
Tulip strainer. Yeah. Tulip strainer. Nice one. Fancy. Very fancy. So I've got my martini here. I'm just going to pour it in. Since this is the lemon verbena, I'm going to go with a lemon twist over an olive. I love olives in martinis too. And sometimes I ask for both when I'm feeling a little frisky, especially like Castelrano olives. If I find the bar has good quality olives, I would like an olive in there. If the bar has not so quality olives, like if they're pre-pitted, I usually stay away. So for my lemon twist, I'm using a wide peeler here, but you can use any vegetable peeler. You can use a knife. I find this to be the most ergonomic. I went ahead and peeled some in advance, but you just want to kind of peel across, get a nice length of the lemon, like that length. Because I'm fancy, I trimmed the edges of mine so it would look extra pretty with a knife.
There you go.
Press your date. And then when you're zesting the lemon into the glass, you want to have the yellow side facing down. So the pith is facing up, and you're balancing it over the top of the glass like this, with your fingers on each edge like that.
Yeah.
But it's face down, and you just squeeze towards yourself, like folding it in half, and you'll see all the oil express and zest right down into the surface of the drink. You can actually see a lot. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but I could see a lot of zest came out of that. And that's how you get the oil into the drink itself. Mm-hmm. And then, you can twist it a little bit if you want. And then I just drop it in. 50-50 martini.
Do you ever do the lemon peel like over the drink, or do you always just kind of do it to the side so you can completely control the zest?
Yeah, not that much oil comes off while you're peeling it. A lot more oil comes off when you express it. Like a lot should come off when you gently fold it in half. Like you'll see it on the surface of the drink. Cheers.
Cheers. I was very nervous about you guys, while you were talking, I was scrambling, trying to see if I had a martini glass, and I don't, because clearly I have beer cups and Glencairns because I'm a one-trick animal. But Summer held up, like if Summer's holding up a glass, it's not quite a martini glass. Yeah. Then that's cool enough for any of us to hold up glasses that aren't martini glasses.
Wine glass works perfect, actually. Totally.
That's excellent. It's so clean and crisp. Like I was a little concerned, and I don't know why, because it's a classic recipe, but I was concerned that so much vermouth would be overpowering, but the lemon verbena gin just really cuts it in half and tames it, and it's really harmonious.
Yes, they play very well together. And you can experiment with different types of vermouth. You could even go crazy and do like a Lillet or another type of fortified wine, play around. Actually, that's a good segue into Martin's martini, because he's using a couple different types of vermouth. You want to tell us what it's all about?
Yes. All right. So I'm actually going to make the perfect martini. And while that sounds pretentious, perfect doesn't mean it's the best taste in the world. It just means it's a split base of vermouth. So I'm going to use half of sweet vermouth and half of dry vermouth. And instead of gin, I'm going to use aquavit. So my aquavit is called aquavite, which is essentially a Scandinavian spirit that has caraway, dill, and fennel in it, but I made a little bit of California fusion spirits. So it has a little bit of extra botanicals like fresh sage, grapefruit, and ginger. So it makes it very savory and botanical, like a gin, but without that juniper note. So that's why we're using the aquavit as well in the martini here. So same thing. I'm going to use a stirring glass, and I'm going to jig out. So jigger is your best friend for repeatable cocktails. So you want to make sure you always measure out your ingredients. And I'm going to use 2.5 ounces of aquavit. So this is a 2-ounce jig. And then this is a 1/2 ounce. So 2.5 ounces. And as with summer, I'm going to go ahead and add my ice. And I also have to step off screen real quick for that. And already you can smell the botanics coming off. I pre-measured the amount, so that's why I have a little Ziploc bag there with ice. And of course, as Summer mentioned, you got to keep your vermouth in the fridge. So I'm going to go get my vermouth as well.
Beautiful. That's I really like what you said. Both of you said about chilling the vermouth. And actually, we have our friend from Bourbon Bites who said, "I still have friends who don't refrigerate their vermouth." Guilty as charged.
It's a fortified wine.
I'm not perfect, Summer.
Well, now you will. Now you know.
Now I will. Now
Even in the fridge, you should replace them after about 3 to 4 months at the most.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay.
Because it will go bad. So you see, this is actually a 1-liter bottle. I go through quite a bit of it, so I would suggest getting the smaller bottles for your home bar. So I'm going to do a 1/4 ounce of the sweet. And then I'm going to do a 1/4 ounce of the dry.
Yeah, and if I was doing a more classic ratio martini, I would probably do
Half and half, right? At least. Yeah.
2.5. Yeah. So.
Yeah, this is going to be a very dry martini. So yeah, thank you for that. That's a good point. And I like things, dry. I like things bitter. I like things tart. So for me, I really want to do the drier component, but still allow those vermouths to kind of play in here. And this one is also a debate in the martini world. Are you going to use a bitter or not, right? So the orange bitter is what you would use if you use a bitter. So I will use 1 dash of orange bitter. When you do a dash, you turn the bottle upside down and give it a hard shake. It's not a drop. It's a dash. So that's one is always hard for people because they want to be very curious with the bitters.
Yeah. Just go for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I use a stir spoon as well, but I like to use the kind of teardrop side of it because I feel like I get better traction when I do my stirring with the teardrop side. And I love this sound.
Does it, as you're stirring this up, there's so many different dry vermouths, sweet vermouths, and such. Are there go-tos that are no-brainers, or do you think you can play around a little bit and then find your favorite?
I think the latter is probably better because there's so varied flavors in vermouth, so it's got to be very close to your personal preference.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, Capone Antica for a sweet vermouth has been kind of my go-to. I kind of tend to switch up my dry vermouth a little bit from time to time, but I also like to experiment with different producers. And I didn't pre-chill my glass with ice. I actually put mine in the freezer, so I'm gonna go get my cold glass as well.
We did the exact. Yeah, we did the exact same. I forgot to chill glasses, so I had to grab a glass and.
I guess there's a nice frosting on it as well, right? I think that looks super sexy. And as Chris, I'll have this julep strainer that I put into my glass, and then just simply pour off the cocktail. And I'm also using the orange peel, and I did this. Oh, sorry, the lemon peel, and I did this. So I did one for squeezing, and get the oils out and kind of stir it around the edge a little bit just so it sits on the glass itself. And then I pre-cut, and look at that. Also cleaned it up a little bit so you got fancy straight edges. And then I put that on the glass. And here you go, a perfect martini.
Very elegant looking.
Look at that. Nice presentation.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Really quickly. Oh, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
I was just going to say what I think is lovely so far is that while they are experts in what they do, they're completely easygoing about, it can be this way or that way. So again, I had to go scramble because I don't have any orange bitters. So I'm like digging through cabinets hoping to find a bottle, and then I get back just to hear them say, well, the orange bitters is actually kind of optional, but if you're going to put one in, this is the one to do. And I'm just sweating bullets. You can't see it, but I'm just like, I'm 2 for 2. One with the glass, one with the orange bitters. It's great. It makes cocktails fun, right? Because you can just, or like some are saying, you can go from a 1/4 ounce to a 1/2 ounce to tweak it the way that you want. Like it's just, it leaves a lot of room for personal interpretation as well as unpreparedness. So you can still have fun.
Yeah, martini is a perfect experimental cocktail. You can really go any direction with it, and it's always got to be correct.
That's very true.
Yeah, with this one, I had an audible from Haida. So well done. There was a question that came up from Lars Ulrich. I'm not going to keep going, Lars. I apologize. I will destroy your name. But Lars wanted to know if there's any sort of in-between type of vermouth.
Yeah, I'll take this one. So besides dry and sweet, there's also Blanc vermouth, which is a clear vermouth that is sweeter than dry vermouth and not as sweet vermouth. But the flavors are also very different. And then within each vermouth house, some dry vermouths are on the sweeter side, then other dry vermouths could be very like bone dry or bitter. There's a lot of variation within each brand. And then the 3 main types would be sweet, dry, and Blanc. So the Blanc might be kind of like an in-between, although it has its own character. I don't think you could just put half sweet vermouth and half dry vermouth and end up with a Blanc. It is its own unique thing. But balance-wise, it's probably a little bit halfway in between. And it's nice if you want to keep your drink colorless and use something that's on the sweeter side in a vermouth in a cocktail, because color is often really important. Sweet vermouth usually, almost always, has a lot of color to it. It's a lot of like macerated herbs and roots to give it the color. And I love the color of your perfect martini. But sometimes people want something clear. It's just it's a presentation aspect. So a Blanc might be halfway in between. That's a really good question.
If people weren't expecting a perfect martini to have sweet vermouth in it, they're probably gonna wonder what this cocktail is when it comes in, because it does have color, right? So
yeah, it doesn't really look like a martini. It looks like a halfway between a martini and a Manhattan, and I guess in some ways it kind of is.
I put some of Brahms' Boy Drinks World Passion Fruit bitters on it. Digging it.
Oh, nice.
It's a good idea.
Speaking of Boy Drinks World, he's just making sure that you're drinking it out of your coffee mug.
No, that's my vessel for stirring things to make sure I get the balance right. The outside of the coffee mug is ceramic, so it actually gets nice and cold, just like a regular glass would, pretty quickly. And everything's tasting great so far, in my humble opinion.
Great. Do you have a favorite, Heinz?
No.
I'm calling out now, Sam, for tomorrow, just so it's on record.
Before we move away from martinis, I've been a huge fan of aquavit martinis lately, and I think it's a really fun twist. And it was really excited to work on this with Martin when we were kind of coming up with what drinks we're going to make, because I've actually been ordering out martinis with aquavit quite frequently. I feel like maybe I'm starting a trend. So if you see the Geijer Spirits Aquavit on the shelf, give that one a go, because it does really make a lovely martini. Perfect or classic or 50-50. It's a great choice. But I think aquavit gives it a different savory element that most gins don't offer. And if you're not really a juniper fan, but vodka is a little bit neutral, aka boring, then aquavit might be actually the perfect solution for your martini.
Beauty. By the way, there's a question. This is a good question from Colin. We call him the pluralized mares. That's his nickname. Can you pre-make these? Can you batch them up for parties? Or
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a new trend. You might see it on some menus, like in steakhouses and stuff. I'm thinking of a menu that I saw recently. It has a freezer martini, is what it's called.
Ooh.
And they pre-batch them. Actually, the new bar in San Francisco called Members Only has a freezer martini on their menu. So yeah, you have to dilute it though. So it's best to make the batch, stir it so it's diluted, and then you can just pour it into a super chilled glass and you're good to go.
Okay.
I have a lot of friends that actually kept a bottle of martini in their freezer throughout the pandemic for whenever they needed it.
These are smart people. Yeah, there you go. In case of emergency, open the freezer.
When I host cocktail parties,
breakfast in your board. I don't know.
So when I host cocktail parties, I usually pre-batch it, but I don't dilute it. So the only thing I do is pour it in the shaker and then add the ice and actually shake it at the party. So at least you have some event of the cocktail occurring.
Yeah.
And at that point, we introduce the dilution and the chilling.
Yeah. Depends how much work you want to do at the event.
Yeah. Oh, but that's good though. It makes people think you're doing a lot of hard work on the spot when you're really.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Well, 8 cocktails, no problem.
I often do that for margaritas because they're better when they're freshly shaken.
Yeah.
You can make the batch ahead of time, so it just does speed things up a little bit for a crowd.
I love it. I love it. There's another question that came in, but from Bourbon Bites, but I'm going to ask it a little later on, Martin, when you do your second martini.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're leaving the world of martinis right now, and now we're doing the gimlet and the daisy. But is a gimlet a daisy or a daisy a gimlet? So
depending on whose cocktail codex you're referencing, the daisy and the gimlet are separate family trees. They're similar. A gimlet is usually gin, but can be a lot of different spirits, lime and simple syrup, whereas the daisy has lemon, usually orange liqueur. A more new school one would be a different type of liqueur, and it's lengthened with soda and served on the rocks. So they're similar, that they're both kind of sour variations, but they're slightly different codex families.
Would you say it's the lemon and lime that really separates the two? Because those are two very different citrus flavors.
Yeah, and the fact that it's one's up and one's on the rocks. One has no soda water and the other one is lengthened with soda. So.
Okay.
And then one has sweetener and the other one has no sweetener, right?
True. Right. Well, the orange liqueur acts as a sweetener.
Well, exactly, but it's not a simple syrup, right? So that's what I was going to say when I was making the cocktail. And this is how you introduce the sweetness into this cocktail, is by using the orange liqueur, because we don't use simple syrup in it. So you don't have to add the sweetener other than the cocktail ingredients.
So they're sisters, but like from the main family, not like stepsisters or anything. They're,
Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I'd love to try the Bonnie gimlet.
Okay, great. Well, I'll do a little gimlet history if people are interested in how the cocktail came to be. So again, there's a couple different theories of its origin. There was a Sir Thomas Desmond Gimlet was actually a rear admiral and a doctor in the British Navy in the 1800s, and he would serve gin and lime to British officers to combat scurvy. That could be the origin, but like most of the British sailors got their rum ration and they weren't really making grog, which is kind of like the beginning of the daiquiri. So I think that theory is a little iffy, but it is kind of cool that his last name was Gimlet. And then the second theory, or another theory, is there's actually also a tool that sailors would use to bore into a cask that was called the gimlet. So maybe that's where the name came from. But the idea is definitely like, lime juice fights scurvy. It's from the 1800s. Gin was a popular spirit, especially amongst British officers. And that's kind of like where the cocktail came about. But originally it was made with Rose's lime cordial, which is a very famous ingredient that's been around since the 1800s. I remember when I was coming up as a bartender, we would we would try and throw all the Rose's lime away because we were, craft cocktail revolution. We wanted fresh juice, simple syrup, that is garbage, Rose's lime juice. But actually, it really did serve a purpose. And it was revolutionary in its day, especially as a preservative. And it became actually set into law to be used in the Navy, and it had to be on every ship, Rose's lime. So people were making gimlets, especially the officers, with their mandated Rose's lime. So that was a Scottish entrepreneur, actually, who invented that in 1867. So that was the original main ingredient of the gimlet was gin and Rose's lime juice. As time progressed and we started using more fresh juices in the 90s, 2000s, and to the current day, the ratio is really turned more into fresh lime juice and simple syrup instead of the two combined in a cordial. So that's the one that I'm going to make today. The first gimlet actually was in the Savoy cocktail book by Harry Craddock in 1930, but people were supposed to be making them in the 1800s on British ships. And the first one that was published was equal parts Plymouth gin and Rose's lime juice cordial.
Wow. Okay.
Which I've never tried, and it's actually probably pretty good. I don't know. I don't know if anybody even sells Rose's lime anymore. I'll have to find some dusty one at a corner store or something. But the one that I'm going to make for you today is more of a modern interpretation, and I'm going to be using the Herb Garden Pink Elderflower and Jasmine gin. I think this really adds a beautiful element to a gimlet. I think actually the first time I had a cocktail with this, there it is. That's a much better label than mine in a weird lighting setup at the bar. But yeah, the first time I ever had this drink in a cocktail when I went out after I sold into the first account that brought it in after we started bringing it into the US, he made a gimlet for me and I just fell in love. I think it's a really great application for this gin in particular because it's pretty, it's floral, and it's pink. And you just want to keep all of those, all of that botanical nuance without doctoring it too much. So, and then the lime really brings that out. So we're going to shake this cocktail. Again, shaking, not stirring, because there's citrus in there. Any juice or syrup, you want to shake the cocktail. You're adding air. So I'm going to use, oh, I'm glad you put the recipe up. The gin. So I'm going to start with 2 ounces. I called this the Bonnie Gimlet because I was trying to come up with a fun Scottish name for the drink that had a good ring to it. And Bonnie is a lovely Scottish kind of name for pretty, or I thought that was, didn't want it to be too floral. I thought that was a really nice interpretation to bring in a little element of Scotland into the cocktail name. And then I'm going to do lime juice, 3/4. So this is actually my same recipe, similar to my recipe for a Tommy's style margarita. So when I do sours like this, I often do 3/4 lime, half simple. I find that I tend to like my drinks a little more tart. If you like yours a little bit more sweet, you would just do equal parts, 3/4, 3/4. You could do it either way. But when I make margarita, I usually do 2 ounces tequila, 3/4 lime juice, 1/2 ounce simple syrup for a Tommy's style, which is without curacao. I got to get my simple syrup.
No worries. Yet again, another audible ooh to this cocktail as well.
It's a nice thing about doing this at the bar. Like I know it's all here. I just got to go get it. So 1/2 ounce on this one. 3 ingredients, very simple. Very simple. So, I have my chilling glass here because this one's going to be served up, not on the rocks. So I like to get my glass nice and cold. You could be clever like Martin, put yours in the freezer in advance. Or I just put some ice in this before we started the show, so it was kind of ready to go. So you want to chill down your glass while you're making this drink. So now I've got my ingredients in there, some ice. I think a lot of novices make the mistake of not putting enough ice in the shaker tin as well. You really want to fill it up like at least halfway. You don't want just a couple cubes. You want a good amount of ice because that really helps with the aeration. So I'm using a metal tin-on-tin style shaker, more of a classic Boston style. You can just have a clear glass a pint glass in your metal tin shaker bottom. There's a lot of different variations. The little cobbler shaker has a little lid on the top. You have a little cobbler shaker. This is kind of more classic for bar use, so I'm going to give it a good shake.
You got rhythm, Summer. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think you can tell a lot about a bartender by their shake. It's something that I study when I go out. Now I'm very rarely behind the bar. I'm always on the other side. But believe me, I'm very judgy on people's shakes.
Can you tell? So I will tell you very quickly. I shook a little bit, and as I was shaking it, I said, "They're watching me shake this, and I guarantee I'm doing it wrong or not to their liking." So I think you've just confirmed that. Okay.
You can practice in front of the mirror.
Yeah, what
I
I
was
like.
smart. I did it when she went to get the simple syrup, so she couldn't see me.
That was interesting.
So now I've got my chilled glass. I emptied the ice. So this is an important step. So it says in there, double strain. So what that means is when I'm doing an up drink like this that I've shaken, I don't want all those little ice chips floating at the top. That was popular in the 1990s. It's not popular anymore. It's not elegant. So when I'm using my regular Hawthorne strainer over my shaker tin, I'm going to double strain it, fine strain it is another way of saying it, just to capture any little ice chips. Super important if you muddled any fruit in there. If you were making a different kind of cocktail, you don't want that sediment in your cocktail. We always, because this is a bar, we always strain out the pulp from our limes. But if you're just squeezing a lime right into the glass, there's going to be some pulp in your shaker tin, and this alleviates that. So you get a nice texture in your cocktail. So I'm going to double strain it. I'm pouring it through the fine strainer into the glass itself. I like to give a little tap so I can get all the liquid out because I don't want to miss any of that cocktail. And what's so gorgeous about this one, Gimlet, is that it's pink. So this really shows off the color of the petals. So pink elderflower and jasmine herb garden gin is, it looks kind of orangey pink in the bottle itself, but when you make a gimlet with it, it's the perfect rosé blush. And that color all comes from maceration with the petals. It's not like color from a barrel or color from any other process or added color. It's just natural from the petals. And I think it really shows it off in a gimlet. And the aroma is just to die for. I think this is one of the most aromatic gins I've ever experienced. And that lime really amps up kind of the grapefruit notes in the gin. It's phenomenal. Why is yours not pink?
So,
Joshua?
right, Haida?
I don't know. I don't know what I did.
Apparently my
Mine
wife
is
really
super pink.
I used the pink.
Use the
gin.
pink?
Yeah.
Summer, you did quarter ounce lime, or you did half ounce or quarter ounce lime juice.
3/4.
3/4.
You did 3/4 for yours. You followed the menu because you said you like a little more tart. Oh no, it's the simple that you cut back on, huh?
Yeah,
I
I
don't know,
did.
mine came out a little bit yellow
As
too.
it was here on the screen.
Huh.
Joshua, can you add a little bit more of E150, please? Just a little more.
Yeah,
Oh
I've
my
got a bottle upstairs. On the upside, though, despite this not having the color for whatever Haida did, it's still that peak elderflower is coming through. And one thing that I was worried about was that the lime would overtake that lychee fruit note that comes through the elderflower, and it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
So this was the one drink that I was a little concerned about because lime is so incredibly it just wants to overtake everything, but the gin stands up to it. It's fantastic. This is really well done, Summer.
I'm glad.
Joshua, what did you sub in for your edible flour? Because I had no edible flowers.
You know, Haida gave me crap for not going out to get edible flowers. So I got an edible arrangement. We'll have that later.
You know what I did that I think worked okay is we just got some watermelon, And so I took a slice off. I mean, my wife's going to kill me if this can make the watermelon go bad. But I just took a slice off the watermelon and put it at the end. It smells great. I don't know if I can. I think you can eat these too.
You don't often have watermelons lying around in a bar setting. You could.
You do when you have my accent.
You could do a lime peel, like espresso lime peel in this, but I don't think it needs it. I put edible flower on there, and I do have some here at the bar. I just didn't bring them over yet.
Okay.
I have a question for Summer when she gets back as well.
Okay. Yeah, there's a few questions. Martin, if you don't mind, we'll take a little break here because there's some questions that are going to come up.
Absolutely.
And then it'll be a little breather. We'll be able to enjoy the cocktails before we make the fourth one.
So these are the edible flowers that we buy for the bar.
That's beautiful.
And on the box, it just says edible flowers. So I think there's like, I don't even know what all of these flowers are called. Some of them are carnations. I think the idea of like to make sure that they're edible, most flowers are edible, honestly. It just depends how they're treated, like how much pesticides are on them. So I wouldn't necessarily go to your florist or a supermarket and get some flowers and then start putting them in your drinks because the alcohol is going to leach out any chemicals that they sprayed on it. So edible flowers are really just flowers that have not been treated with chemical preservatives. So there's no fear in eating them.
Summer, real quick, I had a question for you about you obviously do your own simple syrup. What do you recommend on how to make a simple syrup? Any particular type of sugar and any particular proportions?
That's a great question, and we didn't go over that yet. So the most common recipe is equal parts sugar and hot water. I usually make mine on the stovetop at home. I'll just put a cup of sugar and a cup of water in a pan and let that dissolve. You don't need to cook it that much, but if you do cook it, I think for like 30 minutes or longer, you're actually changing the chemical composition and it will last in the fridge longer. I think here at the bar, this is my business partner Josh's favorite recipe, which is a little bit more of a 2-to-1, rich simple, and he uses half brown sugar, half white sugar. So it's very specific. Each bar has their own kind of recipe.
I love it. I love it.
2-to-1 is common. That's going to be more viscous. So I knew this was a heavier simple than what most people make at home. So when I measured mine out, I cut back a little bit. I did a light half, or I did more of a third when I made my cocktail because I want to drink it on camera and I don't like sweet things. But most commonly, a 1-to-1 ratio is what I would make if I was making drinks at home. And most cocktail recipes would go along with that 1-to-1 unless they specify 2-to-1. And then you can use any type of sugar you want, and that's another area where you can play. I usually just use like organic sugar.
And that was going to be my question, right? Like, I imagine we don't want to use Diamond, not to call them out as a brand, but you know what I mean? Like just a heavily processed sugar. You want something that's a bit more natural, a bit more unmessed around with to create a better simple syrup, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
One time they had Demerara syrup sugar or sugar syrup, like for super cheap. It was like 50 cents a bottle or something for a big bottle of it at the Japanese grocery store. And I took down a chunk of those, and that's just what I was using for to make anything sweet. It was the best until we ran out and I got fat and Sam told me I had to play soccer again.
Well, for 50 cents, that's great value, because if you were going to make it at home, I think your time would be more valuable than that. But very easy to make Demerara style at home. Usually if it's a darker sugar, it's usually a 2-to-1 ratio. And that's really nice in old fashions, actually. Like a Demerara sugar or darker brown sugar, or even coconut sugar. There's different sugars you can play with, but like a dark color and flavored sugar I think pairs really well with whiskey.
Very
all
nice.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a question came up from Jason Dalrymple, and I'm not certain if he's serious, but maybe he is. Has anyone called out on Sam to see what he's sipping? Well, what's in your Starbucks mug?
Do you have a Glencairn with some whiskey? Are you just...
Well, Jason, thank you for the question. You just throw me under the bus right there. Well, actually, here's this Yair Fernet.
Oh.
So
there you go.
And when you were talking about Blanco Vermouth, I'd like my martini to be this color.
All right.
And when Martin was talking about the perfect martini, and I kind of connected the history of what the name when martini got the name from. I think it's named under Martin Yeager.
If he was alive in the 1800s, yes.
He
Swedes have a long lifespan, I've been told.
Yeah.
Well,
we all
he's
have
got gray in
several
his beard, but he's not
a
that old.
vampire. Yeah.
Oh, gray.
So Sam, I've got a question for you, and I know you told me you had a question or two for Summer and for Martin, but let me ask you this, and Martin, I don't want this to come out weird, so please just hear me through till the end.
Okay, you have me intrigued.
ImpEx Beverages started 2008, right? I have that correct, right? 2008. And from the beginning, right, it was whiskey. And then it became more whiskey. And then after that, guess what? More whiskey. And as we continued down, it became even more whiskey. And then we dipped our toe into gin, into Herb Garden gin, and M&H has their own Levantine gin. And now we have cordials or liqueurs. And, I'm sort of throwing on the hat of the majority of consumers that follow ImpEx Beverages, right, for whiskey. They say, what's going on with cordials? What's going on with gins? So as someone who started this company in 2008 about whiskey, why and this isn't, again, Martin, no offense to you, because I love this and I'm having the best time. And there goes the glass. But why? And I'm not drunk. That was just a terrible thing. But why cordials? Why gin to the ImpEx portfolio?
Well, first of all, have Haida stop drinking. Please. Hey, you can say no to Joshua. Don't say no to me. Weird question, Joshua. Weird question. As you saying whiskey and then again whiskey and then again whiskey, that's probably thanks to you. And yes, we started as whiskey and whiskey and whiskey, Scotch whiskey primarily, and then world whiskey. But running the JVS imports in California as a distributor and having the talented people like Summer and some other people in the team that are in cocktails, whether it's rum geeks or, mezcal geeks and etc. And they put everything in a cocktail, whether it's Mexican rum or Jamaican rum or we started selling the Geijer spirits probably for a few years, and then after a few years, I think Robert Horton organized or orchestrated this with Martin behind my back, and they just came with a project saying, look, you've done so great in California. And I knew how important it was for our portfolio in JVS to have the cordials because of the cocktail theme or mixology theme being so popular. So, and we were offered to bring the Geijer spirits to our portfolio as well as Lemon Heart that Chris successfully orchestrated and some other things. So as your t-shirt says, Joshua, it says what? Think out the box or something, right?
Think outside the box.
We decided to think out the box and went to gins and cordials and rums and etc. Still love Scotch. Yes, I want to be very transparent. I am enjoying this 25-year-old Ben Nevis. But nice. I know Summer and Martin both hate me for that, but I'm learning. Cocktail is not my kind of a cup of tea, but I'm learning, and I learned a lot tonight. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, even as a whiskey lover myself, this is fun. Whiskey isn't always fun. I mean, sometimes you have to be contemplative, and you're like, oh, try this, and do you get notes of this? Sometimes you just want to make a good drink and hang out with people, and it to be flavorful and enjoyable, and then you have another one, and then you try something else, and so as a consumer, I'm thankful for it, and as someone who sells it as well. You know, it's fun. It's something else. It's something different. So I thank you. And I know, Sam, you had a question or two, perhaps, for either Martin or Summer.
Yeah, sure. But before that, Haida, watch this guy because he said whiskey is not always fun. That means that he is getting there. Hearing that from Joshua, something must be going a little bit off the rails.
Yeah, that's my cry for help.
There you go. Well, Summer, real quick, I know we're kind of short on
We've got
time.
one more drink to make too. So
Yeah.
There we go. Why don't you start
Got 30
making
minutes.
drink and I will ask you a question. How does this?
All right,
Okay.
that sounds good. I'm also going to make another shake cocktail. So the Daisy, because it has lemon juice, is going to be shooken. And I'm also using a double strainer. So far, 2 for 2. We're doing things the same way. So it's a very consistent message. I love it. So one thing that you have to talk about when you talk about cocktails is ice, right? And ice programs in different bars are, vastly different. Some uses what you would call refrigerator ice, and some has complete ice programs that have dedicated buildings with freezers that shake the ice to make it clear. Some have different variations of making clear ice, cutting it from big ice cubes, etc., etc. The problem when you're using big ice cubes and you don't temper the ice, for example, it can crack when you pour the cocktail into it. So the first thing I'm going to do with my cocktail, I'm going to put it in a Collins glass with the Collins ice cube. And that's a big chunk of ice. So I want to take it out before I make the cocktail to temper the ice so it doesn't crack when I pour the cocktail on top of it.
All right.
cool. I can do it.
You don't leave the ice in the glass when you pour the cocktail in it? Wait, what?
You have to explain that again.
So it's a bigger chunk of ice, and it's going to fit in the Collins glass, right?
It's like a
You have
stick
a
of butter,
special
but
mold
it's
for
ice.
that?
I like that.
So I'm going to let that sit there while I'm measuring out my ingredients. I usually measure my ingredients in the small cup.
Martin, can I pause you for just one second? That is some serious specialty ice that few people have. And so as you're going through this, if we could talk again, if we can come back to the ice for, just in case you don't have ice that is in the shape of a stick of butter, you can use this.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can stack a bunch of small cubes on it. It's going to have the same effect. This is just visual for presentation, right? It doesn't change the cocktail. It doesn't make it taste better, but it looks like a better presentation, right? So it doesn't change the flavor of the cocktail other than your perception of the cocktail when you're consuming it.
Got it.
So don't worry if you don't have a butter stick shaped ice cube. It's not necessary.
But you can buy silicone molds for those, and they're not exorbitantly expensive. Just like you can buy silicone molds for a larger, 2-inch cube that might be really nice on an old fashioned, or even like if you want to put a spirit on the rocks, you dilute slower, a big rock, big stick, big rock. Those are very popular specialty ices.
Yes.
Speaking of specialty ice, can I ask one last question about ice? I have to get geeky about this, right? So most people, when they make their ice at home, it's not clear, right? There's a cloudiness, and then the edges are clear. Mm-hmm. And when I looked at that looked like a clear stick, butter stick of ice. And so I'm wondering,
it's called directional freezing.
Yeah. Okay.
It's called directional freezing. So we could do a whole show on directional freezing.
Yeah, they're ice nerds, right?
Yeah, if you want to get nerdy on ice, you can go deep. I highly recommend Alcademics, which is my friend Camper English's blog. Okay. And he will tell you all about directional freezing and ways to make ice at home for cocktails and make it perfectly clear, because your freezer is not going to do that for you on its own. Your ice won't do that.
So this is kind of an insulated bucket that is pretty deep that you put the mold in, and it only goes a certain way of the bucket. So it freezes from the top down because of the insulation. So it pushes the impurities of the ice down into the bucket, which leaves you with the clear ice on top. So that's essentially the tool that I'm using to build these kind of clear ice cubes. And then we have different inserts, small cubes, big cubes, spheres, and Collins.
Yeah.
Got it.
Martin's serious about it.
And then,
nice shake, Chris.
Look at that. And hey, Martin, I've got one last question for you. Can you show myself and the viewers what a Collins glass looks like?
Yes, I will in a second because it's still in the freezer.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm pre-freezing my glass again. So it will come out and it will be up here. I just measured out the aquavit, and I'm going to measure out the orange liqueur now, which is going to be an ounce. And as we talked about earlier, this is going to provide the sweetness to the cocktail because there's no additional sweetener in there. Now, I don't know if people are familiar with my orange liqueur, but I like an orange liqueur with a little bit of attitude, which means this has a lot of bitter orange peel as well as orange peel, but I also use vanilla bean. It only has 3 ingredients. And we distill the vanilla bean to give you that sense of sweetness without adding too much sugar. So this is not an overly sweet orange liqueur. It's a natural orange liqueur that has a little bit of challenge to your palate. You're going to be able to note the bitter orange coming through.
This is what I love about your spirits. They're not sickly or sticky sweet. You get the sweetness that it needs, but it's just supporting all of the flavors from the herbs and the botanicals you're using. I think it's really fascinating what you're able to accomplish there.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, I work really hard of setting that tone of the exact right balance. And that's where the biggest kind of experimentation at the end happens, right? What level of sweetness are you putting onto that spirit? Because you want it to be able to lift and carry the flavors, but you don't want it to be dominant or depress the flavors, right? So it's just hitting that balance is really hard and takes a lot of work. But, you know, when the end result is right, you're really happy about it. Like, and I'm stoked over my spirits, right? They're exactly where I want them to be. Doesn't mean everybody else is going to love them, but I'm going to love them.
Yeah. Oh, go. Sorry.
If I can add something quickly, when Martin and I were both doing R&D on this cocktail, I noticed we needed more California orange liqueur than other orange liqueurs from the recipes that I saw in books, because there's a lot less sugar in Martin's liqueur. But what the beauty of that is, you're using an ounce of it, so you get an ounce of delicious natural orange flavor without the added sweetness. So it brings more to the table, and you can use more of it without the drink being cloyingly sweet. So we had to totally change the specs on what like an old school Daisy recipe is, because his orange liqueur is unique because it has so much less sugar than most on the market. A lot more orange flavor and so natural tasting, really beautiful.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but sugar is where hangovers come from. Am I correct in that?
Partly, yes. It could be some bad distilling involved as well, but yeah.
Okay, it's right. I mean, that's
some alcohol, but yeah.
I think you know. Again, back to this.
But
What's that?
I think it's more quantity of ethanol is really.
That may be the main culprit today. And then, so I'm going to shake this cocktail. But if you see here, I'm using very different size. I don't know if it comes through, but very different sized ice cubes, right? Because, you know, as Summer said, this creates aeration and froths the cocktail. But it does that by actually air flowing through the ice cubes. And when you have different size ice cubes, you bring different velocity to the actual aeration, which gives you a different texture and mouthfeel of the cocktail. Now, and as I was talking, I actually put the ice in the small cup, but I meant to put it in the big cup here. So I'll just gotta put a few over here and then pour everything over, because you gotta measure out the ice in the big cup. That's where you need to put the ice. But as I was talking, I can't do 2 things at once, apparently.
I really love what you had to say about the 2 different ice cubes and what it does to texture. That to me is such an important component of drink enjoyment, that texture, right? So that's such an interesting idea. Again, back to the geekery behind ice.
Yeah. The speed of the air bubbles, right? Creating different frothing.
That's a vigorous shake.
How do you do?
That just sounds heavy.
I have never
Take it like you mean it. That's what I always tell bartenders I'm training.
And now comes the Collins glass. So the Collins glass is simply a very tall glass.
Okay. Yeah, like a highball glass.
Highball glass.
Which is why you have this ice cube. It kind of fits the. I'm gonna put it right in front of me, I guess. Because
there you go. Yep.
And then you just put the ice cube inside. Normally, I would use a tongue for the ice. You don't touch it with your hands. But since I'm at home in my kitchen, I'm like,
Just you, yeah.
Yeah, it's just.
Enjoy your own self.
Exactly. And of course, double straining the cocktail.
And the double straining, is it back to the presentation and the elegance, or is there something else you're trying to do with
Texture
that?
too. So, any residual pulp or anything, ice chips, it removes all of that. So you have a very fine and uniform texture.
And then topping it up, a little bit of soda water. I make my own in the soda stream.
Water.
Oh, we didn't do that.
And I then just like to lift the ice cube once or twice to make sure that you get the bubbles going down a little bit in the cocktail so it doesn't get all stuck on top. But just gently so that you don't lose the fizz.
Ah, okay.
So you want to be very careful with that stirring.
Is there a ratio of seltzer, or is it to taste, basically?
Essentially to fill up the cup, right? So you measure the cocktail to have enough volume that you want to put on top.
Got it.
And then I put a dehydrated lemon wheel on top. Whoop.
Oh,
How about that? I'm going to do it on my side and then turn it over because otherwise I'm going to get that snap all day. What? There we go. There we go.
okay.
Decoration.
Whoa!
That thing does not want to comply.
It actually split. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it inside. How about that?
There you go.
There we
It
go.
looks good inside.
Those things are actually tiny little clothes hanger pinchers. And sometimes they're not very sturdy.
Okay.
So this one split in half apparently when I put it on. So, backup plan.
So there was a question that came in before, and I wanted to ask it just now. Where the heck? Here we go. From our from Mr. Bourbon Bites. Can you talk about Aquavit, exactly what it is, how it's produced, how you produce yours?
Yes. So Aquavit, it has a long history. It comes from the 1500s, and it used like botanicals that we had readily available in Scandinavia. It's essentially Scandinavian spirit. But Norway, Finland, Finland is actually not so big on Aquavit, but Norway, Denmark, and Sweden has different styles of Aquavit, even though they're so close together. Mine is a Swedish style Aquavit, but all Aquavit has in common, it has to have caraway. So that's that bready, savory component that comes through in Aquavit. And then it has to have either dill or fennel as the second component to be able to call Aquavit.
Oh, okay.
Mine actually has all three of them. And then the additional kind of botanicals that come through from my California fusion spirit. But traditionally, Danish is kind of super clear and very caraway focused. Swedish tend to be sweeter in taste, but that comes from using more dill. Usually we have more dill in the Swedish aquavits. So that's where you get a sense of sweetness from. And then Norwegians, they're more on the sort of barrel aging of aquavits. So they're famous for their lignée, for example, that actually goes across the equator back and forth to get aged. So in Denmark and Sweden, you usually drink an aquavit chilled. In Norway, you do not.
Are there any rules or regulations to a specific ABV or a minimum ABV for Aquavit?
I actually don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're usually a derivative of snaps, in Swedish.
Yeah. Sure.
So they tend to hover around 40%,
Okay.
So just by natural, I don't think that there's nothing really governing it other than the botanicals that need to go into it, which holds true for a lot of my spirits. There's not a lot of my spirits that are governed by a body that says it has to be A, B, or C. So, I get kind of a level playing field, right? I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. I really love the Geijer Spirits Aquavite because from a bartending perspective, it's a lot less aggressive on the caraway, and the additional botanicals he uses, kind of bringing in that California fusion vibe, really softens the classic Aquavit, where it becomes approachable for people that may have never had Aquavit before. There's some Aquavit that is quite aggressive on the caraway and turns people off. So this is a wonderful starter Aquavit for the category, and has tons of different applications. I kind of, when I'm selling it out, I call it like the surfer's Aquavit because it has kind of a beachy vibe to me.
All right.
Yeah, I think it especially works terrific in a martini. And I was shocked. It's really stunning in a daisy too. And it was fun come up with a drink using his orange liqueur and the aquavit together. I think it pairs really well.
Mm-hmm. It's delicious. It's refreshing. It's summery, you know.
Should I quickly talk a little bit about the history of the daisy before we finish?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, because we were talking about cocktail history. So it was originally published in 1876 in Jerry Thomas's Essential How to Mix Drinks. Actually, the daisy sounds like a flower name, but that's not where this name comes from. It actually originates from a 19th century slang, which means something extraordinary. And that same slang is where doozy comes from. Like, it's a doozy. Daisy doozy. That was such a fun fact. I didn't know that fun fact until I did this research. Super cool. But because it's one of these original cocktails in the cocktail codex of the families of cocktails, it's the forerunner of the sidecar, the margarita.
Yeah.
Drinks are more popular today. We don't really drink gin daisies that much. So I was hoping to present this drink today to kind of help, people get excited about like the OG, the mom drink of the mother of the margarita, basically. Because our margarita is a tequila daisy. And the sidecar is also very popular today with cognac or brandy. But the daisy is I think, a really fun expression. And often it's served over crushed ice. And sometimes they'll like put a little powdered sugar and some fresh berries on the top, which kind of speaks to also like a mint julep vibe, which Chris, you might get into being from the South. So I think it's
this drink.
No, it's got some interesting relatives. And I think it's a sour lengthened by soda. I think maybe we can make it the drink of summer 2022, the daisy.
We have a local pizza joint here called Coal and Daisies, coal-fired pizzas and margaritas.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah,
Daisy.
margarita is daisy in Spanish, so that's where they got the name from.
Say
and
that
that's where family it comes from. Margarita in Spanish is the word for daisy. Ta-da!
We're learning all sorts of things. That is very cool. Very cool. So Sam, I know you had a question or two. I'd love to hear from you.
Real quick for Martin. Martin, if you get in the middle of the night and Mother Mary comes to you and you picture some cocktail that you feel would be next step in Jaeger spirits or in mixology world or whatever, what does it take? What's the approach for you to then execute that and make it happen?
You mean the base spirit itself for that cocktail? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So what I normally do is like, I sit at craft cocktail bars, see what people are doing, see what's like, exciting to my palate. And Fernet, for example, I fell in love with while sitting at different bars, trying different Fernets. I only thought there was one Fernet before I started making one. And the way I normally approach it is I think about the botanicals that I think could be useful for a spirit like that. And then I infuse every single one by themselves. And then I go and taste each one of those botanicals. And based on the taste, I kind of pair the ones that I want to work with. And then based on, because I then have a little, spreadsheet that tells you how long they've been macerating, how many grams per, 40 or 40% alcohol, etc. So I build kind of a ratio based on the extraction that you see in one of these botanicals. And then I kind of build my first recipe on that. And usually I get to a point where it's really workable from the beginning, and I only have to adjust 1 or 2 or 3 of the ingredients at the most. I got 21 in my Fernet and 31 in my Amara, for example. So,
okay.
Well, thank you. Now we know how you went from glog only to whatever you have now. So we're waiting for the next one.
Yeah.
Summer, real quick.
Martin is a terrific barfly in San Francisco, and I see him out in bars sometimes too, because I am as well. So I also learn a lot by being out. And I think the introduction of each of his expressions in the line has been so timely for what is trending in cocktails. His Amaro, I think, is particularly fantastic with the extra Swedish botanicals in there. It really sets it apart from a lot of other Amari on the shelf. It's really unique. And when he came out with the Falernum, which is such a departure from like the boring Falernum you see everywhere, it's really amped up in flavor. I think he's been very creative and like has his finger on the pulse. That's what I'm trying to say.
So Hark has done a great job, for sure. Well, Summer, you're next. So pretend you're a bartender at Hello Stranger, and I walk in the bar and ask you to come up with something that is your favorite cocktail. What would it be?
My favorite cocktail. I always get nervous doing that because I don't think everybody likes the same things.
I like it. I made you nervous. Okay, go on.
I always try and steer the guest back in my bartending days. I would steer them towards a solution of what their favorite cocktail would be. Because it's really more about hospitality. It's not me showing off like my favorite drink of the day. It's much more about finding what their favorite cocktail would be. So I think that's really where the hospitality comes into it. So I'd probably ask them a couple questions about, perhaps their like balanced sweetness level, what they like, if there's some base spirits that they don't like. My favorite drink when I'm bartending is actually making something completely unique for a guest that they absolutely fall in love with. Like that's the best interaction. That would be my favorite cocktail of the night. Like just making a guest smile like that and surprising and delighting them with something super different. 100% would be my favorite cocktail. When I'm drinking by myself, I tend to drink a lot of martinis, Negronis. I like to keep it simple. I make a lot of martinis and Negronis at home. Margarita is probably one of my favorite drinks. I love the classics. But if I'm going out to a new bar and I'm inspired by the creativity on the menu, I 100% just order off the cocktail list. I never, if the bar doesn't have an innovative cocktail list, I'll do a go-to, like a Negroni, martini, whatever. Hopefully they make it correctly. But if they have an innovative cocktail list, I love to see what creativity is out there, what people are up to, definitely feel like I'm part of the community in that way. And I need to stay on top of what people are enjoying and what people are creating for others and stay on trend.
I definitely enjoyed the mocktail that you made for me several years ago, and it tastes still in my palate. So thank you.
And that's a sweet story. Yeah. And then you asked me to make all the cocktails for your wife's restaurant. So if you go to Sam's restaurant,
and
taste my
as
drink.
much as I hear the complaints every day, I haven't heard complaints for a couple of weeks now. So thank you for that.
Oh, geez, I had a very important question. And yes. So, and this is a question for both you, Summer, and Martin, but potentially more for you, Summer, because I think, Martin, you said you're less cocktail focused and more spirit focused, at least with your own brand. Is it possible for you to go to a bar and order a drink, a cocktail, and just enjoy it without analyzing it? How did they do it? What did they pretend? Yeah, no, huh?
I'll enjoy it, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you'll always wonder, what did they do? What's different? What did they incorporate? Oh, miso, that's cool, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. For me, like I love eating at the bar, but my husband wants us always to sit at a table because otherwise I'll just be at the bar like analyzing like every move the bartenders do and like can't believe they stir it that way. What are it's a mise en place? What's going on here? I just can't help myself. It's just too many years in the business to not like really pay attention. So he puts me in the corner of the room at a table like facing away from everybody. So 100%. I just enjoy it.
I asked this because just really quickly, I was having a conversation with Miles Monroe from Westward Distillery out of Oregon. He used to be a brewer, and I was at the distillery. We're tasting some casks, and at the end, he said, "Try this beer." And he was saying he was a former brewer. He has such a difficult time enjoying a beer because he's too busy analyzing what it is they made, how they may have made it, how maybe he would have done it different. And so I'm curious, Martin, yourself as someone who makes cordials or liqueurs, like, can you just enjoy, or are you analyzing?
I mean, I'm analyzing for sure, but it gets me excited. I mean, that's where I learn. That's where I take creativity from. That's where I take my cues from, right? So I'm super excited. I mean, anytime I see a Fernet or an Amaro that I haven't seen or tasted myself in a back bar, I'll order it. I need to try it. What's in this one? And then you're like, oh yeah, okay, it has this, has that. It's like, but that's where you kind of build your palate from and see what you really like. Because I only build spirits for myself essentially, right? And then I launch them, and so that it's all R&D, but it's so exciting, it's so much fun. I love, especially also when it comes down to cocktails, right? The creativity that people put into making cocktails and balanced cocktails. It's very rare that I dislike a cocktail, and I think only once in my life I sent a cocktail back, and that was an extreme example, because anything that people put effort into to create, there's a thought behind it, right? So I experience what they kind of meant when they built that cocktail. So it's always enjoyable, and it's just super exciting.
So which one of you is going to make an appletini next? No one? No takers?
If I would start very differently. I would start 3 weeks ago macerating apples in vodka perhaps, and then burning some brulee on top of it, or you gotta go wild with an apple martini or an appletini, right?
I was actually presenting whiskeys at a new whiskey bar recently, I think just last week, and one of the buyers, it's a group that are putting together this new high-end whiskey bar, brought across the nose of the spirit, and they're like, I get a lot of appletini on this. And we all laughed because I've actually never had an appletini.
Oh my gosh, I was going to say you haven't lived, but actually, yes, you have. You have. Fine.
I moved to California too long ago to ever have to endure like a appletini.
Really quickly, I know we've only got a few minutes left here, but a question came in from Brian Devoret for you, Martin. Are you working on new spirits? Are you going to add on? Because I think you've got 7 spirits now in your standard portfolio. Are you looking at adding an 8th or a 9th?
I mean, you're always working on something, but right now it's a lot to manage 7 spirits. I'm a one-man operation with an 800 square foot warehouse, so it's a lot of just-in-time management just to get these SKUs to work and have enough bottles and space for the finished product and then the churn. But every time you're out there, right, you're tasting something new. You're like, I just tasted an aquavit the other day that was just so fantastic that it made me inspired to like maybe branch out and do like a super dilly aquavit, because that's really exciting. I have an apricot liqueur ready to go, but I just don't have space to like roll it out, right? So yeah, there's a couple of things in the work. And when it comes to bitters, I want to make a Genepi. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Are there any other? I mean, you've got Glug, you've got Aquavit. Are there any other Swedish, very Swedish liqueurs that could potentially show up within your portfolio?
Well, there's a punch that is really fun, which I always been toying with the idea, but I can't get the right botanicals, and it's a super fun spirit. There is one on the market in the US. I think it's called Kronan.
Yeah,
Kronan punch. It's really good, but that's super Swedish and something I grew up with. This is one of those
competition to take down. There's only one, Martin. Let's go.
Yeah, that's right.
There can only be one, Martin. Highlander all the way.
Because with the punch, you have to have warm pea soup with ham in it and drink it out of a cool tin cup, right? Yeah, that's punch. But yeah, that's and other than that, there's like so many schnapses, but snaps. But I don't want to bring those out because I don't think that's for the palate here. I brought a few back and tasted it on people, and they're like, "Oh, what the heck is this?" I'm like, "All right, not that one." I love it, but it's not ready for the American market just yet.
All right. Well, I want to close things up here. Martin, Summer, if there was any closing comments you wanted to throw out there, and of course, Sam, Chris, if there was anything else you wanted to add. I've just been enjoying watching Chris dance around with cocktail glasses.
They're all delicious.
I know, they're so good.
They're all delicious. I got closing words. You want to hear them?
Yeah.
Don't get carried away with the caraway. And the daisy's about to have its day, and I still have 4 cocktails to drink. So, I got a good evening ahead of me.
There you go. Mr. Silver?
Oh, one of them went.
We have 3 cocktails left.
It wasn't only me. It
Number
wasn't
3.
only me.
It wasn't only you, but to be honest, I don't think I can handle 4 cocktails because that's the thing about cocktails is they're my kryptonite. That's why I take small sips from all of them.
The light out too.
Smart. Sam, Martin?
Well, I've enjoyed it so much today. So much fun. Joshua, thank you for orchestrating and putting this together. Summer, a queen. All I can say, no more comments. A queen. Martin, always your creativity, your passion, your enthusiasm just has no boundaries. Chris, don't break another glass, please. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today. I hope you had fun and you learned something. I did. So thank you all.
Great.
Beauty.
Thanks
Yes,
for
thank you
having
so
us.
much.
Now, it was a pleasure. And just for those that are watching, the date is not set yet, but we're looking at doing a rum focused event, rum/cocktail focused event within the next few weeks or so. We're trying to nail down the dates, but keep an eyeball on the ImpEx Facebook page and our Instagram. You'll get all of your details there. Martin, Summer, thank you both so much. This really was not just eye-opening, but fun overall.
Good.
And yeah, just a really great time. So thank you both. Sam, Chris, as always, thank you. Thank you to my wonderful wife, Haida. Aw, thank you. And I wish everybody a wonderful night. Thank you all for joining
Bye,
us.
everybody.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers.